I think the concern should be mounting greatly, and in honor of the World Series of Poker main event, which just got down to the final table yesterday, let's talk about this all-in analogy that the Rams promoted on their social media feed. Not just because they used a clip from a movie where the guy who went all in actually lost, but the real pitfalls of going all in. Sometimes you go all in with what you think's pretty good hand. You go all in with ace-queen, like, hey, I should be in good shape. And you might be coin flipping, and you might be drawing nearly dead. And while the Rams aren't drawing nearly dead, the problem is they're probably coin flipping in round 1, round 2, round 3. And what are the odds of winning 3 straight coin flips? Well, the answer to that's 12.5%. And if you look at the Rams' current path, not to win the Super Bowl, but just to get to the Super Bowl, even if, Broussard, you think they are the best team in the NFC, the generic you, not you, Chris Broussard, the fact that all of these games would be on the road, their best case scenario would be, what, that it's a pick'em? So a pick'em against Tampa, you have 50% chance of winning that. Say you do. Now you're at a pick'em against Green Bay, 50% chance of winning that. Say you do. Pick'em against Arizona or Dallas. The odds of winning all 3 of those, 50, 50, 50, that's 12.5%. If they're slight underdogs in all 3, as I think they would be, oh my God, my camera's freaking out. The odds of winning all of those, all those 3, say they're a 40% chance to win all 3. Then all of a sudden it's a 6% chance that you go 3 for 3 on 40% shots. So if they're not dead for the bye, Broussard, but if they don't get it together quickly, and by the way, their road games the rest of the way are at Green Bay, at Arizona, at Minnesota, at Baltimore. None of those are easy. Yep. Their home games are Jacksonville, sure, that's easy. Seattle, we'll see. And then week 18, a San Francisco team that's had their number. San Francisco maybe would be playing that week for a chance to make the playoffs. I don't see, Broussard, how they get the bye. And without the bye, and with a quarterback that's never won a playoff game, I don't see how they win 3 straight coin flip games. So, yeah, I think they're in real trouble, Broussard.
Well, look, I got a little lost in all the calculus you were kicking, but overall, I do tend to agree with you. Look, the problem for the Rams and for their fans is that it's Super Bowl or bust. And Jenna alluded to this. She said, Are they still the class of the NFC? They were, in my view, they were never the class of the NFC. They are in that top class. They are in that upper echelon where they're one of the teams that does have a legitimate chance to get to the Super Bowl. But if your perspective is Super Bowl or bust, and anything less than being the definitive favorite in the NFC is cause for alarm, then be alarmed. All right, and you should have been alarmed from the get-go because, look, Matt Stafford, yeah, he's better than Jared Goff. But this notion that he was going to step in there automatically and now they're the best team in the league, I just thought it was too far-fetched. It wasn't realistic yet. Maybe he would prove it, but he has been an unproven quarterback. I'm sorry, I know the numbers in Detroit were gaudy, but he played in 3 playoff games. And he lost every single one of them. He had 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in those 3 games. They weren't those losses. And those lost seasons in Detroit were not always the other guy's fault or the organization's fault. I'm not saying it was on him all the time either, but he did play a part in that. And so for him, he's never had a season with expectations like this. Smart football people were picking him as the preseason MVP. And those expectations only increased over the first 8 weeks when they went 7-1, and he probably was the leading MVP candidate. And now, I don't know, is it a coincidence that he's come back to earth and thrown 4 interceptions, 2 pick sixes in the last 2 games now that the expectations are really high? So we got to see what he is. The bigger concern even than that, though, is their defense, Wilds. They were obviously the best defense in the league last year, number 1 in scoring defense. Now they're 12th in scoring defense, and they got pushed around. I didn't think I'd see it with an Aaron Donald anchoring your defense, but they got manhandled yesterday.
They got
to
bullied.
give up nearly 40 minutes in time of possession to an opponent. It is ridiculous. And they gave up the first 11-minute drive, Wilds, in the last 3 years of NFL football. And so that's their biggest problem to me, is on the defensive side of the ball. But look, and I know I've been long-winded, but Wilds, I just got to say this last thing. If I view them, if you're level-headed like me, and you just see them as a team with a chance, one of the contenders in the NFC, you're not panicking. Because Tampa Bay's had 2 bad losses. All right, Dallas was down 30-0 to Denver just a couple weeks ago. All right, Baltimore's bad losses. We know what Kansas City's been through. All the contenders, for the most part, have had their ups and downs. So later on, Nick mentioned it, tough schedule, Green Bay coming up after the bye. There'll be times to panic later on, but it's not yet, Wilds.
Okay, so I'm calling that the truffle game, and here's why. Nicky, you ever had truffles? You ever a waiter? Hey, would you like to try our truffle fries? I'm like, truffles. I heard a lot about these things. So exquisite, high-end, luxury. Fresh in from Charles de Gaulle this morning. So you try them, you're like, you know what? Trying this truffle fry. Not only is it not exquisite, creme de la creme, it's not great, it's not good, and it might be straight up bad. And that's what I saw from the Rams. Are you sure you're not straight up bad?
First of all, I
straight
love
up bad. And Broussard, I know you talked about but you're a high class guy, Broussard. But just us, pedestrians down here don't love the truffle fries. It's why you love the Rams so much. So here's the thing: they haven't had a quality win since week 3. That win against the Bucs. They beat the Bucs and Tom Brady. We're like, all right, mint them, they're great. Like, all right, then what happened? Well, then they lost to Arizona. They beat a Seattle team where Russ hurt his finger and the wide receiver slipped and Geno threw an interception, but they had a chance at losing that game too. Then they beat the Giants, the Lions, and the Texans. That means their 4-game winning streak, that team's record is a combined 7-28-1. Then they had 2 bad losses. Titans' loss was bad. They were sitting on single-digit points until a garbage time touchdown. Same last night. You're sitting on 7 points for 95% of that game. Broussard, you talked about how bad that defense is. Not great. Von Miller out there waking up getting pancaked by George Kittle. Not awesome. And then, Nick, I know people are like, well, it's a bye. I think the bye is actually going to hurt them. We all have friends we're all in the Northeast. You have friends who live in L.A. You're going to have a sit in L.A. for 3 weeks and then go to Green Bay. The only person that thrives like that is Drake. Drake's the only guy who likes to go from L.A. to cold weather. Like, this is great. Right. Everyone else, all they do is complain. It's going to be freezing, and they are going to struggle. They're going to lose another game in Green Bay. They're going to be looking at a 3-game losing streak. I think they are not a Super Bowl contender, Nick.
So just real quick, Nick, so after the game, Sean McVay said, I don't think the last couple of weeks, all the weeks that Wilds just described, is who we really are. Maybe it is who they really are. Maybe on paper they're just flashy with the. Now they've got OBJ and they have Aaron Donald, and I know Robert Woods is out, but they had all these flashy names. Maybe this is actually who they are, and McVay's got it wrong.
Well, I think they're a good to really good team. I think McVay's right. They're not the team we saw last night. The problem for them is a simple one. And I'll deal with McVay in a second. Can we just show my playoff route bracket again? And I just look at these teams. Don't even think about the teams. Don't think about where the games are being played. Just in place of the logos, think about who plays quarterback for those teams. Brady, Rodgers, Kyler, Dak. Stafford.
Good call.
Stafford's better than Goff. He's also the worst of those 5 quarterbacks. And the least playoff experience of those 5 quarterbacks. You might say, Nick, Kyler's never been in a playoff game. Au contraire, my friend. Kyler has played in a playoff game more recently than Stafford. Now, it was in college, but that was against Alabama. Basically an NFL playoff game. That happened more recently than Stafford's last actual playoff game. Brady was in the Super Bowl last year. Dak was in the playoffs 2 years ago. Rodgers been in back-to-back NFC championship games. So you have the least experienced playoff quarterback and the worst quarterback of the 5. Now, again, he's better than Goff, but you're not competing with Goff. Goff seems 0-8-1. You're competing with these guys. And one other thing about Sean McVay.
Right.
Because the favorite stat of every Rams broadcast is the one I'm about to show you. Did you know?
Oh, here we go.
Sean McVay
Halftime.
has never lost a game when leading at halftime. Okay, but well, is his career record undefeated? No. So what does that mean? That means if he is losing at halftime, they're terrible. So what does that tell us? That tells us that if Sean McVay goes into a game with either schematic or talent edge, presses that edge, executes in the first half, there's literally unbeatable. But if in the first half it's like, oh boy, this team's better than us, out-scheming us, out-physicaling us, anything, he doesn't really have a counterpunch. I think that's why last night you saw an absurd fake field goal. A fake field goal that even if it was successful, they probably still would have ended up kicking a field goal because there was 12 seconds left in the half. I didn't understand why they were doing it at all. It's because he knew we've got to at least get it to within 7 at halftime or else we're dead. And so that graphic cuts both ways. Unbelievable when you go into a game, execute your plan, and enforce your will on your opponent. But not a great counterpuncher. And if anybody thinks they're going to go into these playoffs and just roll through, have halftime leads, and no, they're going to be hard games. And so I think the Rams, unless they somehow can get that 1 seed, Jenna, are in real rough shape.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.